Yeah, thanks for getting back on. I got a lot of good feedback about things that you talk about. People love your stories, obviously. But one person we didn't talk about was Will Jones, Coach Jones, and to kind of set the table for this, we talked a lot about Luther Jackson and the integration that happened. But one thing, just to set the stage, 1954, Luther Jackson was built. Before 54, there was no black high school in Fairfax County. So black parents who wanted to send their kids to school had to send them to Jenny Dean High School in Manassas, where they were at a dormitory. They can stay overnight, or they went in DC to high school at Dunbar, Spingarn, or maybe Hoffman, Boston, Arlington, or Parker Gray in Alexandria. There was no black school. They built Luther Jackson, had a 10-year run, and as we talked about last week, 1965, a lot of those kids went to Woodson, and they went all over the county. And then other kids who had been going to other schools also joined other high schools in Fairfax County. Now, I moved into the DC area in 1971 in Springfield, and we moved to Lake Braddock in 73 from Ohio. And we were the first black family in Lake Braddock, the whole subdivision. So it's just amazing how far we went in those 17 years. But I don't think people realize it had to have been kind of a surprise when Will Jones got the Robinson job, the job at the new school. Now, can you tell us a little bit about Will Jones? I'm sure you knew him because he played ball in DC. He was a local legend, and you were in those circles. Did you know Will Jones, and what did you think when he got the job at Robinson? Were you surprised? And just tell us a little bit about Will Jones and the things you remember about those times.
Well, I first met Will Jones probably on Chevy Chase Playground. I saw him somewhere and said, "You guys ought to come to Chevy Chase and play with us on Sunday." So he brought his boys up there, and we played because I work for DC Recreation. As I've said, that's the best job I ever had. I got $1.43 an hour to play ball all day. But so he came there and we played, but they only came like one time, and he invited us to come over to Turkey Thicket, and where Elgin Baylor played all the time. And I went over there once. I don't think Elgin was there, but anyhow, Will, I first got to know Will real well when he was the JV coach with Jim Vandell at Wakefield. Jim Vandell and I were good friends, and we had some knockdown, drag-out battles with Wakefield, and Will was the JV coach. And Will always came in 15 minutes late with the coffee cup in his hand. I don't think that changed when he was at Robinson. And Vandell used to tell him, "Damn, Will, you're going to be a head coach. You got to be on time." You know, Jim was a stickler for things like that. But anyhow, I got to know Will there. And then when he got the head job at Robinson, and I'm not so sure, but I think Ed Henry probably had something to do with that too. But Ed was also very smart. He said, you know, Will was always late. So he learned after the first year Will was there to give Will first period off and take away his sixth period so he could work with his team. So if Will came late, he didn't make a damn. So Ed was a pretty smart guy. But anyhow, Will and I got to be really good friends. And our games with Robinson while he was there were just legendary. The most famous one was when I had a 6'4" kid named John Unterkoffler, whose brother played for his brother Mark played for us on Amaker's team, but Mark couldn't jump over a beer can laying on its side, and there was a no dunk rule. So we're playing, and Joel, the big guy who went and played with the Redskins and played in the NFL, he was about 6'8" and 240, and we get a steal with like game tied, or we're up one, and Undercoff, we get a steal. Undercoff was driving for the goal, and Big Joel was behind him, and he could hear those big footsteps, and he was so scared he went up, and instead of just laying it in, he kind of halfway dunked it, you know. And so all of a sudden the whistle blows, and we're up two, and there's only like, 5 seconds to go in the game, 4 seconds to go in the game, and Will is in the middle of the floor with his high heels, his suede boots on, and that powder blue suit he used to wear with his tails flapping. He's raising his arms. He stops the game. And so I say, oh, great. Now we get a technical foul, and it's our ball. We can't lose. And so after about 5 minutes, Will explained it to them that was a dunk, and they said, no, it wasn't a dunk. Well, the trail official was a guy named Milt Papke, who was a really nice guy. and we used to call him Peekaboo because he always kind of crouched when he was coming up the floor to make a call. And I think Underkoffler did dunk the ball out of sheer fear. So Will stops the game, and after 5 minutes, Robinson's taking the ball out on the baseline, and I say to the official, wait a minute, he's in the middle of the floor. That's a technical foul. And they said, we worked it all out, coach. He said, you know how Will is. And I said, how Will is? What the hell how Will is? He's in the middle of the floor, stop the game. It's supposed to be a technical. Make a long story short, we pressed it. We used a little time press, and they didn't get it up the floor in time to get a good shot. We won the game. So the next morning, Will calls me on the phone. It's the Rooster. I said, yeah, Will. He said, you filmed that game, right? I said, yeah, we did, Will. He said, I need to see that tape. I said, Will, you're never going to see that tape, ever. He said, the boy dunked the ball. I know he did, and I can get proof if I can see that film. I said, Will, that's why you're not going to see it. So we were always good friends. One night at Woodson, we were playing them, and this is how sneaky we were. We were good friends. He's one of my best friends. But Will doesn't give a damn if you're his best friend or his worst friend. If he gets a chance to win, he's going to win. We're at Woodson one night. I know you never heard of this, but you tell me, Julian, if you can figure this out. We're playing Robinson at Woodson. We're behind 7-0, and we have not touched the ball. Can you figure that out? Let me tell you how it happened. Crazy. In those days, you wore a home uniform was even numbers, and away uniform was odd numbers. So we had played on the road the night before, and so we're back home. And our scorekeeper, who was the nicest guy in the world, Bob Hagan, had inadvertently put down the same, he just copied from the night before and put the odd numbers in the book for a home game. So Will's scorekeeper was in Leeds with him. She was a snake too. So we're getting ready to go out on the floor, and all of a sudden, zzz, the buzzer rings. She calls the officials over. She said, they've got 5 illegal numbers in the book. That's 5 technical fouls. And the officials came to me and said, Red, we got to call it. That's the rule. You got the wrong numbers in the book. So I said, okay. So they got Craig Brewer, who's, who used to own Athletic. Craig Brewer, his brother, sure. Mike Digby, or not his brother, but his buddy, Mike Digby. Mm-hmm. So Brewer is one hell of a shooter. He buries all 5 free throws. Now we're down 5-0. They got the ball out on the side. They throw the ball in. He comes off a screen at the top of the key, which would have been a 3-pointer, and buries another jumper. We're down 7-0, and we haven't touched the ball. So now, during the course of the game, we kept pecking away. And during one timeout in the third quarter, Will had this great big clipboard, and he was having trouble getting his guys to do exactly what he wanted to do. So when they came out for a timeout, he was yelling. He was pretty vocal. He took that big clipboard and just crashed it down over the edge of the bleachers. The next day we were still cleaning up residue from Will's clipboard. Anyhow, to make the end of the story ended up just fine. We took the scorekeeper, although David Nussbaumer. We had a little break with we were down 1, I think, and David drove in the lane, made a little short jumper at the buzzer. So we won the game. But Will was upset that we let him come back, but he wouldn't hesitate to take advantage of something like that. He used to come by the house and play ping pong, and it was knock down, drag out. We played down here for a couple of hours on 3 or 4 different occasions. He was just a hell of a competitor, and like I say, we were good friends. And he's hadn't been in town. He's had a couple of jobs. He was at UDC. I think I told you about him coming to camp. And I'd have to go to the bank and get cash, and he would give Earl Jones and Michael Britt $50 a piece and keep $200 for himself. Will was a character, but to know how good of friends we were and what he thought of me, and I recommended him. And I told Lefty, I said, take Will Jones over there with you, because Will wanted to get in college coaching, and he didn't go much for the teaching 5 classes every day and still coaching. He wanted to be in college, so I told Lefty, I said, if you take Will Jones, you'll clean up DC, because he will get you every good player in DC. And Lefty asked me, he said, you think he could get JoJo Hunter or Billy Brown? I said, he might get both of them. Lefty said, well, if he gets both of them, I'll buy him 2 new suits down at Bridges. And so I told Will that. And Will said, hey, I'm going to get those 2 suits. So sure enough, he got JoJo Hunter, first team All-Met and a high school All-Met, and Billy Bryant. signed them both, and Lefty, true to his word, bought him 2 new suits. I don't know if that's legal to do that, but Lefty bought him his 2 new suits. But Will's girlfriend had been ill for years, and he took care of her. His last coaching job, I think, was at Norfolk State. And when he retired, he was taking care of his girlfriend. I didn't know he was even sick, because he would call me on the phone to talk from time to time. But the last time he called me, something was fishy. I just it didn't jive right. He called up and he said, "Rooster," and we talked for a little while. He said, "I just want you to know something." He said, "I want you to know you was the best that was ever up here, the best." He said, "Better than Morgan, better than the old man," meaning Coach Gallagher, "better than all of them." He said, "You was the best coach I ever coached against." And I said, "Well, I sure appreciate that, but why are you telling me that now?" He said, "I just want you to know." And then a month later, I heard he was dead. He had he got cancer, and he was dead. And I didn't get to go to the funeral. It was very secretive. His brother lives over in D.C. I didn't know how to get in touch with him. I don't know to this day whether they had a ceremony or whatever, but I thought that was odd that he wanted to tell me that. And it was like he was saying goodbye. But when you say, were we good friends, Will Jones and I were best friends. He's a special guy to me. Great.
Yeah, what a legacy, because I arrived at Robinson, I think fall of 78, maybe fall of 77. He'd already been gone. Roscoe Dean had come in, and yeah. I just heard story and legend. I mean, they really loved him there, but there was always a little giggle, it was a fun time. You never knew what was going to happen when he was around. Yeah.
Will was like, it's unbelievable. It was like a carnival atmosphere every day. He was a man of his convictions, and he called me one day, said, "I think I'm going to get fired." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I got a kid on my team doing drugs. I'm sure he's doing drugs." He says he's late to practice. He comes in, his eyes all red and everything. He says, "I don't know what to do about it." I said, "Well, find out what the story is. Maybe you want to talk to his dad." Well, he called me back the next day and he said, "Well, I found out what was wrong. He came in and the players had told him, said, yeah, he's out there doing drugs. He's messing our team up." So Will confronted the kid, and the kid said something smart back to Will. Will hit him right between the eyes. And the kid went down like a ton of bricks. And Will scraped him up and said, "Y'all shoot around till I get back." He took him home to his father and told him what he's done. His father said, "Good, he deserved it."
Oh, wow.
You think about that? Who could get away with that? Who could get away with hitting the kid between the eyes and knocking him cold? Who could get away with stopping the game in the middle of it? And yet Will had a manager named Flip, a big man, and he had a camp going somewhere where they had a pool. And Flip got his hand caught in the drain. And the guys came running up to get Will, say, "Will, Flip's down in the drain." And he had caught his hand in the drain, and Will went down and yanked his hand out. Guy weighed about 220, and Will got him up the side of the pool, and he was lucky that the kid lived, because they gave him artificial respiration, and that's the kind of guy he was. I mean, he was. I used to ask him, "Will, why you live all the way over in Maryland when you're coaching at Robinson?" And Will had a nice looking wife named Fran. She owns 2 or 3 McDonald's, or did in Chicago. She done very well for herself. But Will said, "Hey, if I lived next to Robinson, she'd be up there every day checking on me." He said, "This way she does." He said, "She doesn't know where I am." So
that's
he
great.
was a character for all characters.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another character and another coach, and he's the exact opposite of Coach Jones, and Coach Jim Warren, who's also from West Virginia, like you are. He's all business. There's no games with Coach Warren.
No.
When did you guys meet? Did you guys know each other in West Virginia? And what was your relationship? Right? In my mind, he's a great coach.
He was a very good coach. Listen, Jim Warren is a wily character. He'll always they might hold it, they might play. He's a very good tactician, and I enjoyed coaching against him. The thing about Jim Warren is that I first met him when he was coaching Falls Church High School. After McCool left to go to West Springfield, Jim took over the head job at Falls Church. So we played them, and they were in our league, and we had some good battles. And I give him credit where credit's due. One night we were playing them in the first round or second round of the regional tournament, in the Final Four, whatever that is. And I had a little point guard named Johnny Oliverio, and Jim didn't think Johnny was a very good shooter. Well, we had just beaten Jim O'Brien and Stewart for the district championship to get into the Final Four teams. and my little guard had scored like 23, and so I was kind of high on my little guard because he was my guy. Well, we get in the tournament, he goes 0 for 13, and everybody said, and Falls Church beat us because Warren, he played a little zone defense, but in Johnny's zone, he wasn't too quick to get out there and cover John. He just didn't think John was going to beat him, and he figured right. It was a good call. So John had a bad night shooting, and people asked me, said, why didn't you take him out? And I said, hey, the guy got us here. I'm not a fool. I don't do things in a panic mode. I danced with the girl that I brung, and the guy got us there and had a good year, and we had a good year. So, but Jim was that kind of coach. He figured things out pretty well, and of course I admired him in one respect because he had a chance to coach his son Jamie in high school, which I always thought would have been nice. My son Tim is 6'5" now, but when he was at Robinson, he was about 5'10". He grew like inches in 1 year. But if he'd have been a good player, I'd had him at Woodson with me. But he was a fair player, and every year at Robinson he would go out for the team, and he'd be the last guy cut. Roscoe and the guys over there, out of respect for me, they'd keep him around till the last cut. But I like Jim Warren. He was a good coach.
Well, let's we're going to get back to some of the other coaches, but I want to talk about one game, and we forgot about it. But I know Pete had mentioned to me at one point the 77 Mount Vernon game. I'm sorry, the 79 Mount Vernon game. Yeah. The year that Mount Vernon won state, they had a tiny team. They had Eric Sellers, they had Derek Steele, they had Junior Brown. Very good team, but very small. And Pete has a bad memory of that game. And I don't want to start a Mount Vernon Woodson feud. But what is your memory of that? That was a regional final, right? That game?
Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, we had a 7-point lead with 1:30 to go. And Ed Henry was keeping the book on the table, and Jimmy Connors and Bob Weaver were calling the game. And the Mount Vernon player reached in and knocked the ball out of Peter's hands, hit it hard, and the ball bounced up. Peter went up and got it, passed it to Mike Carl under the basket, who laid it up, and the whistle blew. And the official called double dribble. That call influenced, in my opinion, greatly the game, because the official went to the table after that and said to Ed Henry, said, he didn't hit the ball, did he? And Ed Henry said, yeah, he sure did hit the ball, so instead of going up 9, now we're up 7. And they were very athletic, and they in the end of the game, Junior Brown, I think, was one of our players, and I thought there was a foul on the play, and Harry Smith said, hell, he did everything but take his uniform off. So, you can see we got a couple of bad calls. The only thing that leaves a bad taste in my mind is that I don't know how he got the game, but Bob Weaver was coaching in the junior high school that feeds into Mount Vernon. That's not a good situation. If we win the game, he's going to have a hard time dealing with those people down there. But that's neither here nor there. The game's over. They won the game because they did a real good job late in the game. But here's what happened, Julian. I don't know if Peter Holt told you this, but we were just having a light practice, just run through on the day before the game. And Mark Jerusi, one of our players, kind of got under Holbert, and he turned his ankle. It was a bad high ankle sprain. And so Pete was not at full strength at that game. I think he scored 14 points or something, but the average is like 30. And he didn't have a real good game. And I think that's what leaves a bad taste in his mouth, that he played the game when he felt he wasn't at full strength. But we had some other guys that played out of their skulls. So sometimes it averages out. That's one of those things. That's another one of those times where they changed the rules, and we had 4 trips to the championship game and never went to state. I think that year, us and Mount Vernon were both very good teams. I think we could have gone to the state and won the state that year, and I think we could have won it with Amaker. But now they've changed it back so that everybody and his brother gets to get beat and get back in the tournament. Then you can go to the state. It's so much easier path today. I would have loved to take in a runner-up team. Like I told you, the best tournament was when I first started coaching. The top 2 teams went directly to state. That's the way it was. If you were winner or runner-up in your region, you went straight to Richmond in an 8-team tournament. But then somebody got the idea that we ought to go with the NCAA format and cut it to Final 4. And so if you lose in the regional final, you're done. And that's Hey, it is. But to be honest with you, after looking back on it, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's basketball. And to be honest with you, I could say, damn, I wish I'd have won one. No, I don't. We didn't. The one where we had a crazy chance was in '77 when it was the 21-18 game, a slowdown game, where T.C. Williams comes out and gets in the zone the second half with all those monsters, and we held the ball, and we almost pulled it off. So, you win, you lose, but the main thing was the relationship with the players and what you do for them and where you send them and what they do. Like the thing I told you before, I'm very proud of is that 3 of our guys, Tommy Amaker, Chris Nocky, and Dip Mitras, have all gone and been major college coaches. And Division II, where Dip is, that's major college ball, and it's that top level Division II. A lot of guys in the NBA from that level. So that's what it's all about. Getting your guys in school. Been a great run.
Yeah. Well, so we talked about last week about the great coaches you faced in the 70s, 60s and 70s. There was a whole bunch of really good coaches in Northern Virginia.
Really?
So but in the 80s, there was a new generation of guys, and they could coach too. You had Wendell Bird, you had Martino. Later on, you had Jim Smith, you had Gary Hall, you had Brian Mitras. Did the game change when you got these new bunch of coaches, or they were just like the old guys, just smart guys that could beat you if they had the right tools in place?
Well, Jim Smith and Gary Hall have the utmost respect from my point of view, because they're the transition guys. They coached against the old guys and they've coached against the new guys. And so, I think both of them do a very good job. Gary's still coaching and Jim's still coaching because they're lifers, Yeah. What I see in the young coaches is I don't see many lifers. In the old days, Carl Hensley, Don McCool, Jim Warren, Mike Henson at T.C. Williams, those guys would coach forever, The new guys, I don't think they have quite the dedication to the game, and it's not all their fault. What's happened to our game is AAU basketball. It used to be that you had a good prospect. You could expect the college coaches to come there to watch them play. I used to find out from my players 6 schools that they were interested in. And I used to make sure that I contacted those schools and that those coaches came by to see them play. And if they liked them, then they had a chance to get a full scholarship, which was worth a lot of money then and is worth a ton of money now, as the way it is. But I think the young coaches are at a disadvantage because it seems that all the good young players are now going to the WCAC, or they're going down to Oak Hill Academy, or they're going to Fork Union, or they're going down to that other military academy where my nephew Riley went for about a week before George Mason plucked him off their team. But now the guys go play 30 or 40 games in the summertime and into the fall with their AAU team. And so the AAU coaches, the major college coaches don't bother too much with the high school coaches anymore. And so I think that's caused the interest to dwindle, that the AAU has taken forefront now, and the high school coaches, and sadly enough, because of the way the principals view basketball and the way that the Virginia High School League views basketball, basketball has been great in the state. Ralph Sampson and Alonzo Mourning and J.J. Reddick and,
Moses Malone.
And Grant Hill. We've had a ton of good players, and yet our rules are antiquated. It seems to me that instead of promoting to try to cut that supply line off of all the good public school players going to private school, that we could have expected some help from the administrations, but about the only thing they've done is they've come up with some green days where a guy can work with his team like 15 days a year. But at best, it's not a good system. But so I think the young coaches are not as dedicated. They're not. I don't see any lifers in there. The last lifers, I wouldn't even consider Wendell a lifer. Wendell's a very good coach, But I think he retired early. He should still be coaching. I mean, he's young enough to, I don't know what his retirement is with Fairfax County, but guys like him shouldn't get out of it. Guys like Jim Smith, he's going to coach at George Mason High School up in Falls Church now because he loves the game. Gary's been to Houston. He's now in North Carolina. Gary told me the other day in an email that he thinks about 2 more years and he'll be out because he said the kids nowadays don't want to compete for playing time. They just transfer. They don't want to hang in there when they're not on the starting group or in the first 8. Next thing they want to do, they're going to another school next week. That's unfortunate. See, the whole atmosphere has affected the coaching. I think there's some decent coaches now that are coaching in the northern region, but nothing like it used to be. Nothing like it used to be.
Yeah, I think guys like Coach Bird, like you said, it's the way the game is right now. It really takes the your ability to improve these kids and to win big games, and the games just don't mean as much. So I guess when you have a chance to retire, you have to take it. I will say I've been talking to a lot of coaches, and I really enjoy it. And it's interesting because in most jobs, like say even college coaches or whatever, if you win games, you get paid more money or you get better opportunities. The thing I love about high school coaching is the pay is all the same, as long as you keep your job, of course. But generally, no matter how many games you win, McCool's going to get paid as much as PJ Kelly at Falls Church if he doesn't have a great year. It doesn't matter. I love the fact that the coaches are in there to be with the kids and just the competitiveness of trying to beat the other guy. That's what they're in there for, because the money is basically the same whether you win or lose. And I find that fascinating. And that these guys like yourself and Coach Smith, you guys stay at it and you guys give a lot back to these kids.
Well, Ed Henry, who was one of my mentors, along with Morgan Wooten, my 2 main mentors, and Harry Smith, who gave me my first job at Annandale, he said that, I don't know if this is going to step on somebody's toes, but he said the guys that can coach forever. The guys that can't coach, they're out of there in a hurry. They're either athletic directors or principals or doing some other job. You got to love it to want to do it for a lifetime. And I think that in the old days, we had those guys with purely dedicated, and maybe some of the young coaches are now, but I just don't see that. Although the guy at Woodson, Doug Craig's been there, I think 16 years. So he's getting a few years under his belt. I'm looking at records, who does what. I think winning 500 games now. Bobby Dobson, who's Tommy Amaker's cousin at W&L, has won 300, and that's a major milestone from Northern Virginia because we don't play as many games as the Catholic League. They play 34, 35. You're going to top out at probably 21 or 22 over here unless you go to the state finals. So it's a whole different ball game, and but. I'm sure there's some good young coaches around, but I just feel like as Morgan Wooten said one day, he said the golden era of high school basketball was from the mid 50s to around 2000, late 90s, because it really meant something. I can remember we played TC Williams with who was our big rival. We played TC Williams. I don't care if it was Tuesday night. I don't care if it was Saturday night, because sometimes we played Friday and Saturdays. But the place would be packed and people sitting on the baseline. The officials had to keep getting people back. I go to a game now, and if there's 1,000 people there, that's a big crowd. The interest is not what it used to be, and I think one of the reasons that is so many more sports now. When I was coaching, you didn't have lacrosse. Wasn't much attention paid to swimming. We had football, basketball, and baseball were the main sports, and we had track in the spring. Other than that, it wasn't there. We didn't have soccer. We didn't have lacrosse. You got so many more activities that a kid can be involved in school, so that basketball is just not the big thing. Now, I have to say one thing, Julian, that principals, the reason they vote anything that football coaches want, the reason they vote that in is because they have been sold a bill of goods that football is the big moneymaker, that it supports everything in the school. It supports all the other lesser sports, and that's absolutely not true. By the time you buy a $300 helmet and $400 or $500 in shoulder pads and a couple $100 in uniforms, and you pay that light bill on that stadium out there, all that equipment you put on a football player, and you got 120 kids in your program, football is very, very expensive. The county subsidizes that. But in the old days, they didn't. It was just, football and basketball carried the freight. And I look at it this way: basketball, if you got a dozen balls and you get a new uniform every 3 years, what do you need? Turn the lights on, sweep the floor, and play. Basketball is a very inexpensive sport. So when you have full houses like we had for years and years and years at Woodson, I know that on the bottom line, we made just as much money as football every year. Where football does have an advantage is participation. When you have 120 kids in your program, then it's rightful that you should put the money in the program. But when they come with that phony argument about football carries everything, that's not so. Now, I have to say, I'm speaking about a good basketball school where you have a good basketball program where the people are interested in, then it's pretty close.
Yeah. So Coach, we talked a lot about parents and how parents have gotten tough, and they really make the job on coaches hard. One thing you did say, though, is you did mention that at one point, Chris Nocke's father said something to you like, hey, I think Chris needs a little confidence. What are some of the, you said, I think Chris, he said that he thought Chris needed a pat on the back. What are some things a parent can do to help their kid reach their goals? What does a good sports parent do these days?
That's a very good question. To go back to Hank Nocke, he didn't call to tell me about playing time, that I needed to play Chris more because Chris was already playing. But he was a junior in a sort of a senior-laden lineup, and he struggled with his confidence a little bit. And it was just a reminder that I needed to sit down with him and assure him that he was going to be in the lineup, come rain or come shine, and he didn't need to press. He didn't need to try too hard, and his game immediately went up. And as a junior, he might have been the best player on the team for the last half of the year. But anyhow, what parents should do is I'm of the old school. I'm like John Thompson. Some lady brought her kid up to John Thompson at camp and said, well, I'll be here every day to check on him. And John said, no, you won't. He said, I'm a professional coach. You give me your kid for a week, you go home and go to sleep. I'll take care of your kid. That's what parents need to do. They need to butt out. And I'm harsh when I say that, but there have been some good coaches who got soured, that were good coaches that got soured on coaching basketball because a couple of parents didn't like the way they operated. Translation, my kid's not playing enough. My kid should be starting and so forth. I just think that parents need to trust. They need to put their kid in the program when he's a freshman, and they need to realize that, now I take one thing for sure. If the kid's not treated, if somebody's yelling and screaming and acting like an idiot toward a freshman basketball player because he turned the ball over, I think that's wrong. And if a guy doesn't understand in coaching that you get more with sugar than you get with vinegar, then he's in the wrong game. You can't yelling and screaming at kids. This just doesn't work. It just alienates kids. And there are a couple of coaches that I came across in my travels that I felt were negative. That they, one night I came out of the locker room with one coach. I said, so-and-so had a good game. I really liked the kid that played on their team. He said, well, you can take him back with you if you want him. And I went, hey, you put him on my bus, I'll take him back with me but he was on the kid's ass the whole game, and that's what you have. Now, if you have that, then that coach needs to meet with his athletic director and his principal to find out if he can't find a better way to reach the kids and treat the kids in a good fashion. One of the things I know about our program, hey, we weren't easy to deal with all the time, but I never cursed a kid in my life. I sat on the bench with Harry Smith and cussed all the time, but I never cussed at a kid. Harry used to say, what the hell are they doing out there, Paul? God damn, what's going on? It was like a circus. It was just fun, just a lot of fun. But I think that players that abuse kids, there was a girls coach a couple of years ago, and there was this one player that he didn't like. And I got this firsthand from his assistant, and he would stay on, he just didn't like her. And she was one of his best players, and he would ride her until he totally ruined her confidence. And her parents were upset, and they should have been, and they got him fired. Well, that's one case where maybe the guy should have been fired, because the assistant coach related to me said, I told him, you can't do that. You can't treat her that way. She's one of your best players, but I just don't like the way she does this and does that, so ended up costing his job. Well, he went to another school and he got fired there after years. So there are coaches who don't treat kids right. But I say to parents, if you've got a coach who works hard, treat your kid fairly, whether or not he's the 14th man or the first man or whatever. If you treat your kid fairly and the kid is becoming a better person and a better player over a 4-year period, then you don't rattle that guy's cage. You step back and you don't send emails and you don't talk to the coach about why my kid isn't playing. I have to say that in 43 years of coaching, I think I might have had 4 parent conferences, and every time it was about playing time. They want their kid to get something he hadn't earned. And that's the key. And the parents today, and I think that's what's wrong with education. They tell me that you can fail a test and take it again, you can take a test up to 3 times. Well, why in the hell didn't you prepare for the test the first time and accept the grades you made based on the effort you put in? That's the problem. Parents want to for their son to have this, but they don't want him to earn this. That's the rub. That's my rub. Now, I say I've coached today, I might be fired in a week, but at Woodson, I had good principals who backed me 100% all the time. So if somebody came to Phil Turner, my athletic director, and said, well, I don't know about Red, this and that, so go talk to Red. Well, of course, they never showed up. They want to come to the athletic director and see if they could get him to crack a little bit and give me a headache. But I can only think of about 4 times in 43 years where I had that kind of situation. Of course, you have to understand, during the time that I coached at Woodson, I think we figured it out that the kids that went on and played Division I or Division II got scholarship that totaled somewhere between $2 and $3 million. So we saved parents a hell of a lot of money by developing their kids in the kind of player that could get a college scholarship. So they weren't saying too much about that. They were very happy with that arrangement. So kids today, that's what Gary said. They don't want to compete for playing time. I just did a lecture at Fairfax to their camp the other day, and the center was compete, competition. Don't be afraid of competition. If you're the 8th man, work to be the 6th man. If you're the 6th man, work to be the 3rd man. Earn what you get by competing. That's what sports are all about. That's what they're supposed to be teaching our young people today. Competition is good because, baby, when you work for AT&T, you better sell some telephones. You better get out there and do it because you'll be out of a job if you don't, right?
Yeah.
So you got to earn it in life, you know.
So Coach, one thing about basketball, unlike football, where a player goes to a combine, you'll have 40-yard dash times, certain power drills that they do. There's no real testing for basketball players. But I understand from Jason Coleman, Gibraltar's his son Gibraltar plays at Flint Hill now. He just transferred from West Springfield. You have a new testing system where kids can shoot certain shots or whatever, and they can get a score. And why don't you tell us a little bit about this system? It sounds interesting.
I've been doing that for 30 years. It's I developed it a long time ago. I did it down at Duke before I had it really. Mike Krzyzewski invited me to talk down at his camp, and I did it down there. But I didn't quite have it perfected yet, so it was the scoring system. But basically what it amounts to, it's called the 5 game. And the object of the game is to make 5s. And the way you make 5s is you drive to a pre-designated spot on the floor. Say the short corner is our first shooting spot. And we got one guy going down one side and another guy competing against him going down the other side so that they're not going to run into each other. So you drive to the short corner, shoot the jumper. You go get your rebound, whether you make or miss, and go across the floor and come down the opposite side, shoot the jumper. Get your rebound, go down the original side and shoot the jumper. Then you throw the ball to the official. We have another player on the baseline acting as the official. You throw the ball to the official and you go to the free throw line. In about 5 to 6 seconds, he's going to throw you the ball and you have 1 and 1. So if you make the first, you get the second. Now, making 5 is pretty hard. It's pretty hard for this reason because, number one, a lot of kids go out and they think they're working on their game. They're shooting, walking around. That's a walk around. This is all full court. It's 32 to 33 minutes of all full court running, shooting, footwork, endurance, and you're competing against the other guy. You want to see if you can put more points on the board, and we announce the score after each quarter and announce the score at the end of the game. And it's 5 shooting spots. So you go to short corner, then you go to the bank shot we call the Sam Jones special. You got to bank the ball. If you don't bank the ball, it doesn't count because we want people to learn to use the backboard. The third shooting spot is the elbow. The fourth shooting spot is the center at the foul line. And the fifth shooting spot is a 3-point shot. But the 3-point shot counts 1, the free throw counts 1, everything counts 1 point. So at the end of the first quarter, you've got 5 shooting spots, three shots from each shooting spot. That's 15 points. You got a potential 10 points at the foul line. So that's the first quarter. The first quarter is 25 points. And then we switch sides. On the first quarter, you go down the left side of the floor. On the second quarter, you go down the right side of the floor. Same shots, same deal. Only thing is in the fourth quarter, you get off the dribble line. We have a dribble line straight down about 15, 16 feet out. It's a volleyball line is what it is. We use that for the drill. In the fourth quarter, we add 3 moves. We move in so that you're right at the foul line and the baseline, the lane line and the baseline. And now you drive it to the sideline and you spin. Good spin move. You drive it toward the half line just before you get to the circle. You make a good crossover back to the dribble line. And then you drive it down to about the top of the key. You stop, hesitate, and then go. Stop and go move, hesitation, and you go to the same shooting spots. So the same 5 shooting spots in all 4 quarters. The only thing is we add the 3 moves in the fourth quarter. That's to improve their ball handling. Now, the best case that I have, I went to Gary Hall's camp to do a talk one day when Scottie Reynolds was a sophomore. And their best player was a senior who went to UMBC up in Baltimore. So already had a scholarship anyhow.
Yeah, I can't think of his name. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can't think of his name either, but I can tell you what he did when Scottie whipped his butt. So Scottie was just a young kid. And so I ran him through it and showed him what to do, everything. And so Scottie was ready to go. He was a competitor beyond competitors. Great kid. So the senior was like he was bored with all of it. Now, so I thought I'd fire him up a little bit. And I said to the senior, I said, now, you're not going to let this sophomore beat you, are you? And he just kind of gave me a little smirk. Well, the first time he ever ran the game, Scottie scored a 67. And that guy scored a 62. And he walked out of the gym and left. So I knew Scottie was going to be a player. And so I told Gary, I said, now, if he does this and runs this full court, it'll develop his left hand beyond belief because he's doing 2 quarters all with the left hand. The thing we don't allow him to do, we don't allow him to hit the ball with the right hand on the left side of the floor because we want to develop that weak hand. The only time they can touch the ball with the right hand is on the one move when you got to get to the free throw line for the foul line jumper. You got to make a good crossover and then go to the free line. So you're going to hit one dribble with the right hand. That's the only time. But it develops their ball handling, especially on the weak side. It develops their footwork. How to jump stop properly and square your shoulders on every shot from every angle. It develops their endurance. It's a 32-minute workout. Tommy Amaker had a kid that wanted to come to Michigan. He was starting for Miami and he hurt his ankle and he lost his starting job and he got mad and he left. And he was the leading scorer in the inner high with something like 35 points a game. So I go over to H.D. Woodson and went through 2 steel doors and down to the gym with Keno Wilson and I put him through the 5 game. And it was in May, and it was a little hot, and the kid was terrific. He on his jumper, he was up about 3 feet, had a great vertical jump, great touch, strong-looking kid. And I said, man, we found one because he wanted to go to Michigan. Well, only thing was, we got to the start of the fourth quarter. He walked out. He said, I quit. I said, well, you only got a quarter to go. It's not that hard. He said, too tough. Don't want to do it. So he quit. So I called Tommy, and I said, you can't take him. He's good. He's really good. But he doesn't have the right attitude. So Scottie Reynolds started doing this. Gary told me a couple times a day. Well, you see what happened. When I took Scottie to ABCD camp, Tom Konchowski told me, he said, I said, where's Scottie rated in the point guard business? He said, we don't rate him as a point guard. He's a 2 guard. I said, what? He said, yeah, he's something like the 16 number 2 guard in the country because Boo Williams, who he played AAU for, there's that AAU business again. If Gary had been coaching him all the time instead of Boo Williams, we'd be better off. But anyhow, I said, well, this week he's on my team and I'm playing him at the point guard. And I said, at the end of the week, Tom, we're going to talk and see if you think he's a point guard. Well, I told Scottie, we run the quick break, which we do. I just put my stuff in when I went up to ABCD and we gave it to Scottie and told him, don't stop till they tag you. And so he went down and buried jumpers and 3-pointers and drove to the leg. he ended up being the leading scorer in camp. In a half a game, he averaged like 17 points a game in a half. And of course, Sonny Vaccaro loved him, and he made the All-Star team, and he was off and running. But I think that a lot of it was the fact that, number one, he's a competitor, and number two, a very hard worker, and he didn't mind doing that. Of course, for all his hard work, I gave him about 6 pair of shoes to wear, Adidas, for his hard work to reward him. Everybody likes a little reward, but Scottie Reynolds, and he went to Villanova and made first team All-American. That's pretty damn good for a Northern Virginia kid. The only guy I did better than that was Grant Hill or Tommy Amaker, who make first team All-American. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. So, well, Coach, this has been great. Last question for you. We talked a lot about the other coaches, and you talked a lot about players and AAU and stuff. But if you have one player, and let's leave Scottie aside for now. If you have one player you could have coached in the Northern region, so while you're at Woodson, not Paul VI. If you had one player you could have coached on an opposing team in those years, who would it have been, and why?
Well, he and I often talked about that he said he wished he'd have played for Woodson because I'd let him shoot. Skeeter Swift played at GW, was a terrific high school player, but he weighed about 230 in high school. He was 6'3" and 230, but a great passer and a great player, and just one of the most heady players that you'd ever be around. And he used to say he wished he'd played for me. He played for Clay Estes, who was a very good coach, but Clay was a sort of a strict disciplinarian. Clay ended up he coached at Hammond, and then he coached at McLean. And Clay told me one day he was going to run his players through a 6-minute mile. And I said, what are you going to do if your best player doesn't make that 6-minute mile like Skeeter did at GW? If Skeeter ever did a 6-minute mile, I'm an aviator. Anyhow, he said, they're cut. They can't make my time. They're cut. And so I said, Skeeter, one of the things I'd have done with Skeeter is that I'm not a simplistic coach. There's a lot of wrinkles in our system. Like I told you before, we had 7 or 8 guys that led the region in scoring, and because we knew how to feature players. Well, that's what Skeeter liked. I featured Gabe Oliverio, and Gabe made 25 points a game, and Skeeter averaged about 15 or 16, and he envied that. He wanted to play for a coach that would turn him loose, which I would have. But his personality and everything about Skeeter, he's just a unique kid, and came from nothing, came from down Alexandria at the boys club. I remember when he was a little teeny kid, I used to go to boys club and play basketball when he was just a little guy, and he was always in everybody's stuff. He was stealing comic books from people and calling people names and running. He was always into something, but he was a very unique character, and I wish I had a coach Skeeter. A lot of other players like John Hummer at WNL, who played in the NBA, would have been nice to coach. It'd been nice to coach Grant Hill. I could have go to Coach Grant Hill if I'd have gone to South Lakes. Had 2 chances to go there and turned both of them down. Had 2 chances to go to Robinson, turned that down. Had about 6 chances to go to college. The best one was with Lefty and turned that down. I guess you'd say I'm a loyalist. I loved Woodson. And I think Woodson did a lot for me. So it ended up pretty good. Getting the gym named after you is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, Coach, this is great. You've done a lot for all the kids, even opposing players like me. You made basketball mean a lot, and you've given us a lot of joy. The stories that you tell are priceless. All the things you experience, and the fact that you're allowing us to hear them back again. It's just great. I appreciate you doing this. I'd like at some point either to get you on a call with a few of the other coaches from your time, or even a bunch of Woodson players, and do get dipping those guys and do it again. But I've really enjoyed this. I really appreciate your time. So hopefully we can keep in touch and do this more often.
Yes. Text me your email address. I don't know if I have it. Maybe I have it. Maybe I don't. But text me your email address. And here's the rub, Julian. You say you appreciate the coaches and people that come on, but how about you? All the time you're putting in with this. My wife would have shot me already. Putting all this time. That's what my wife says. My wife says the shoemaker's kids. I put a lot of time with a lot of other people's kids, and maybe I didn't do the best job with mine. I think I did all right, but I spent a lot of time with other people's kids and enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, Becca was a great lady. I went to intermediate school there for a year or two, so I knew her years ago. I
Yeah.
haven't seen her since then. So I know you did a great job with her. But yeah, the time that I spent, it's been a blast. I've had a really good time with it, and it's good to see everyone connecting. And it's good for the soul to be around people that mean a lot to you.
Yeah. Well, listen, what you're doing means a lot to me, and I know it does to a heck of a lot of other people. So I don't know if you can find the time, but keep up the good work.
I sure will, Coach. And let's keep in touch. I will text you my number and my contact information.
Thanks, Julian. I appreciate it.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks, Coach. Have a good one. Bye.
You too.